Hey winner, it's Coach JC, and I want to welcome you to the Win All Day podcast show. I am Coach JC, and I am honored to be your coach today and help you win more in life. After overcoming hitting rock bottom, throwing away my story, fighting to be a father in a custody battle, over $400,000 in debt, depressed and suicidal, I was able to create a new story for my life. I was able to take my greatest pain and make it my greatest purpose. Since that time, I have been on a mission. I have invested, studied, and absorbed everything and anything that I could get my hands on when it comes to motivation and performance. I am absolutely obsessed with everything personal development, and my calling in life is helping other people just like you to win more in life. For the last 15 years, I've been so blessed to build a personal brand around what I love to do. Start 5 companies, a nonprofit, author 5 books, professionally speak, coach, and train people from all walks of life when it comes to motivation, mindset, and performance. See, I believe everyone was born a winner, that you can win, that you will win, that you must win. I believe everyone has a purpose, and my goal is to give you what you need to live life with passion, on purpose, and win all day. You were born a winner. It's time to create your new story, to do life on your terms, to live a life on purpose with passion, and I want to coach you to do just that. Once again, welcome to the Win All Day podcast show. All right, what's going on, guys? Coach JC here, and I'm super excited. I want to welcome you to another episode of the Win All Day podcast show. I'm actually going to bring my guest on now just because she's absolutely amazing. She is a beautiful human being. I cannot wait to introduce you to her. But if you are a frequent listener, okay, you know what time it is. We believe that if you want to be a winner, that there is power in your words. And if you want to live a life of winning, you got to speak winning words. You can't speak defeating words. So we kick every episode off with our Win All Day winning confession. Please repeat after me. Today is my day. Nothing will get in my way of me being the best version of me. I am here on purpose. I have a purpose. I am strong. I am passionate. I am fearless. I choose faith. I am a winner. I will win and win all day. Yes, you are a winner. And once again, I want to welcome you to the Win All Day podcast show. Without further ado, I am going to introduce her in just a minute, but please help me welcome our featured guest, Dr. Caroline Leaf. How are you, my friend?
Very good, thank you. Great to see you again. Just saw you a couple of days ago at the conference, and now we're chatting again. That's so wonderful.
We did, and I'm super excited to have you and introduce you to our audience and our tribe. I've had many of our colleagues and our friends just encourage a conversation with you and me. And then, yeah, we just got to spend some time in Dallas, and I got to finally meet you and your amazing husband. We were speaking at the same event, and Dr. Caroline Leaf made such an impact on the audience. So I'm excited to jump in today. I know we only have a short amount of time, so I want to get right to it. Let me give you a quick introduction, and then I'm going to hand it over to you. This is Dr. Caroline Leaf. She is a best-selling author of multiple books, guys. I'm just going to stop there and say, go to her website, get them all right now, because they're all amazing. I don't even know which one to tell you is the best, but she is a communication pathologist, an audiologist, a clinical and cognitive neuroscientist with a master's and PhD in communication pathology. And Dr. Leaf is also a best-selling author of multiple books. She teaches at the academic level, also at medical and neuroscience conferences and to various audiences around the entire world. And she frequently lectures to audience worldwide, linking scientific principles of the brain to spiritual, intellectual, and emotional issues in simple and practical ways. Her passion, very similar to mine, is to help people see the power of their mind and teach them how to control their thoughts and control their emotions and learn how to think and find their sense of purpose in life. So once again, please welcome Dr. Caroline Leaf to the Win All Day podcast show. We are blessed to have you, my friend.
Oh, thank you, Coach JC. That's a lovely intro and so full of energy. Thank you. So
Well,
cute.
here's where I want to start. I want to start with you just building some rapport with our audience. Obviously, there's going to be people that are listening that probably heard of you before, and there's going to be people that may have never heard of you. So just give us a quick overview. Who is Dr. Caroline Leaf? Where does she come from? And how did we get to where we are today, my friend?
Okay, well, thank you. I am as you mentioned, a communication pathologist, but I'm focused in on what we call psychoneurobiology. So I'm a neuroscientist, and my focus of area of expertise has been to research the mind-brain-body connection. I've been in the field for the past 38 years, and I still do clinical trials. I practiced for 25 years in South Africa. I don't practice anymore because I do the research and I write books, and I have a mental health platform, which is pretty big, the Neurocycle app, and our goal and objective is to help empower people to be able to understand the mind, how to manage their mind, and how to therefore manage their mental health. I've worked across the board with people with severe traumas, with people that are just battling with day-to-day stuff, as well as the dementias, learning disabilities, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is sports injuries, traumatic brain injuries, dementias, learning disabilities, autism. So I've got quite a wide variety of experience, and all of that I've brought to the table in terms of really helping people to understand what is the mind, how do I use my mind to the best of my ability, what are thoughts, what are emotions, what are memories, do we have any level of control, and what is mental health really? I still, as I said, do clinical research. I publish in scientific journals and I write books, and I have a podcast called Cleaning Up the Mental Mess, which we talk about all these concepts to help people be empowered.
I love it. And we're super excited to have you. It's very close to my heart, the work you do. I first heard you speak at Victory Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I got to tell you, the mental side of the entire game is where I radically changed my life. And so I was so intrigued from how you tied in the actual science behind the mindset along with the spiritual side of it. And I thought, at that time, I don't remember the exact first book. I think I bought it was Switch on Your Brain, but then Think and Eat Yourself Smart. I bought that one, The Perfect You. I just kept following you and loving how you just continue to, really just in a simple way, show people how powerful the mindset is. And so today, I want you to jump in. You just spoke at an event that I was at, and I spoke at in the evening, and I got to sit there and listen to, what you spoke about. And you said some profound things, but the most recent book is How to Help Your Child Clean Up Their Mental Mess, right? A guide to building resilience and managing mental health. And in this book, you talk so much about who we become as adolescents and adults starts at our childhood. And so I want to jump into that book today. I think it's so powerful of where we're at with a country and as a country. But I first want to ask you this, Doc, why did you write this book, How to Help Your Child Clean Up Their Mental Mess?
Well, when I was practicing, I worked for years with all age groups. So my youngest patients were 2 and 3 years of age, and my oldest were in their late 80s, and some of them even in their 90s. So and then looking at what's happened, the landscape over the last 40 years, it's been a very troubling landscape when it comes to mental health. So basically, mental health currently in today's environment is seen as an illness and a brain disease or a genetic disease or a chemical imbalance. And what's really concerning is that is not accurate science, yet it's the dominant philosophy, and it's affecting our children, it's affecting adults, it's affecting everyone. It's a philosophy that has been disproved, yet it's a philosophy that 95% of people have pretty much been led to believe is the accurate way of thinking. So if people are battling with depression or anxiety, or a child's battling with depression or anxiety, it's immediately labeled as a mental disease, and a diagnosis is given, and people are labeled. And the implication of a diagnosis is that there's an underlying neurobiological, or there's an underlying biological cause. And, that works for cancer and autoimmune disorders and cardiovascular issues and things. But when it comes to the mind, that kind of approach doesn't work. And the evidence is very evident today in that we have a massive mental health crisis across all age groups. And what's really concerning, Coach JC, is that they do global surveys of mental health across the world, and they compare countries and they compare different age groups. And this is a huge thing. And generally, children come out better than adults. But for the last couple of years, that has swapped, where children are worse mentally than in a mental space than what adults are, worse or as bad. And so we have to look at what is going on. And, you know, you heard me say the other day, and you may have heard me say this before, if you know, because I know you listen to some of my stuff, the mental health crisis is not the real crisis. The mental health crisis is a symptom of a larger crisis. And that larger crisis is the lack of mind management. We've got so caught up in the brain, and it's great. I mean, I'm in the brain, I'm a neuroscientist, so we've studied the brain, and the growth and understanding of the brain over the past 40 years has been phenomenal. But it's also been detrimental, because when you get so caught up in such an incredible structure like the brain, it kind of feels like everything's there. Meanwhile, if you're dead, your brain is disintegrating. So where's the real power? And the real power that we've been talking about for thousands of years, spiritual people, philosophers, scientists for the last 150 years, is the mind. Your mind being your aliveness, the ability to have this conversation, the ability to wake up in the morning and be a person in life and so on, and have relationships and work and experience the sunset and all that stuff. That is your mind. So your mind is the most important thing. So based on that, all of that, that's a long answer to the question of why I wrote this book now. I've written so many books for adolescents and adults, or from adolescent to adulthood. And I've got an app called the Neurocycle app, which is this mental health platform where all my systems are in there and basically guide the person. But watching how bad it's got with children, and how children as young in the United States, for example, as young as 2 are being diagnosed with pediatric bipolar, which doesn't even exist.
Wow.
So kids are being labeled, and adults are being labeled with things that seem as solid as something like cancer. But it's not like that. There's no reliability and validity, and those are fancy science terms for the way people are being diagnosed. So I'm not saying that depression and anxiety don't exist. If anything, I'm giving more validity to those experiences than what a label could, because a label is an empty thing. You may get a label, and you may get told your child's got ADHD or your child's got clinical depression, and you may initially feel, wow, okay, well, that explains why my child's battling so much. And then they tell you that clinic, you ask the doctor, what does it mean? Why have they got this? And they'll tell you there's a chemical imbalance and you must take these medications. And that's what they have been doing for 40 years. And that has created a terrible problem. The research shows that that's made things worse. And it's not accurate. So that's why I brought this book out, is to empower. I've been empowering adults for years. Now I want to empower parents to empower their children. And I saw in my practice, when I worked with these young children, I did a lot of family therapy, how when you provide a child with the mental skills to be able to process what they are experiencing, what they're exposed to, what they're going through, and you give them the tools to be able to talk about that and to deal with it, then you are preparing a child for life, because life's inevitably filled with challenges. So but our children, Gen Alpha and Gen Z, are evidence of that too, and even millennials are getting the message that, oh, you're depressed, you're sad, you're battling at school, there's something wrong with you as an individual, which is hope. And we have to get away from that. We all battle. All humans are messy. All of us are battling, and it's very normal to battle, and life is hard, and there's no bad emotion. What we need to recognize is that all emotions are part of our human experience, and we need to understand what those emotions are. So if you have depression, and you're feeling extreme depression, that doesn't mean you have a mental illness. It means that you have a signal coming from your mind, brain, body, or psychoneurobiological network, to use the fancy words, that is telling you, pay attention. There's information. This is information. This is not a symptom of a disease to be suppressed. This is not a diagnosis that's needed. This is a description that is needed.
Wow.
Long answer, but I kind of think it lays the platform for probably more questions.
I love it. I love it. And one of the things I want you to flow today, Doc. Like, honestly, like, that's how I run the podcast. But I watched when you speak, you are very led, and you have a lot of knowledge and wisdom, and you tie it all in. And you said some powerful things, because there's a lot of people that they're diagnosed with that disease, or they're told it's a disease, right? And then they take that into their adulthood, and it becomes subconsciously a part of their identity and who they are. This anxiety, this depression, and all of a sudden they associate with having mental health issues or challenges, which now leads to, if not, and you talk about this in the book, if not addressed and left unaddressed, it follows them into adulthood, now causing mental and emotional issues in relationships and marriages and them as parents. And so I just want you to flow and jump in, because you take it wherever you want. I know there's a lot of things we could talk about, but I think the first key, right, to change anything is awareness, right? And so you talk a lot about the 4 warning signals to watch out for, and how to teach your children to be aware of what their body and mind are telling them. Can we jump into that for a quick minute?
Absolutely. So what we have in our psychoneurobiological network, which is such a great word, psycho meaning mind, neuro meaning brain, biological meaning body. That network means that we've got a mind, brain, and body. We've got 3 things. And most people think mind and brain are the same thing because of just the way that media and science and the medical world and psychiatric world talk about the mind in the brain. But the mind isn't the brain. The mind is separate from the brain. The mind drives the brain responds to the mind, as does the body. So the brain and the body are physical and respond to the mind. And they're 3 workers in network: mind, brain, body. And they're on your side. Your mind is your deepest spiritual part of you. It's your aliveness. And it's got 2 levels. You've got your, what we call our messy mind, which is what we use as we consciously aware, going through the day, answering questions, living our life, etc. And it's okay to be messy. The thing is we make sure we manage the mess, because sometimes the messiness will lead to a good outcome, and sometimes the messiness will lead to a bad outcome, like maybe one gets irritated or gets snappy or something like that. So the important thing is to manage our mind, and that's where the signals come in. So what I found in my research is I wanted to understand how do our life experiences become part of our mind, brain, body network? How do they get in? What does that look like physically and mentally? And then what kind of level of power do we have as humans to deal with that? Because whatever gets into us, what we do know from the science from especially the last 40 years, is that everything that we experience becomes wired into the mind, brain, and body, into 3 places. And it goes into the brain as a tree-like structure. It goes into every cell of our body as a sort of as a special kind of protein structure, and it goes into our mind as a field. And our mind is embodied. So the fact that your heart is pumping right now, the fact that you can breathe, the fact that you can move is because of your mind. If you were dead, none of that would be working. So your mind is on a physiological level is driving everything. And your mind is also the psychological, you thinking, feeling, and choosing in response. So with that foundation, every experience is wired in, and those networks are the things that drive us. So we have trillions of networks because we've had trillions of experiences, and all day long our brain is changing and it's driving us. So the signals, there are 4 of them. Those signals are what the mind, brain, body network uses to make you aware of when something is disruptive in your life that you need to deal with. And that is, if you don't deal with, potentially it's going to become more disruptive in whatever way, whether it's work, relationships, personal sense of peace, and so on. And also your mind, brain, body network, driven by your mind, obviously, is also looking at the good stuff that happens in our life to make us aware of things in order to unmask our resilience. Because we're naturally resilient, but if we have to work at unmasking and developing our resilience. And so that's where we do that, by managing the toxic stuff and building the healthy stuff. So the signals are the first stage in us being able to recognize the output of how stuff gets in. So experience happens, it gets into the network, and then the network produces these signals. And the signals are emotions. So how depression, anxiety, happiness, sadness. Think of 2 scales. In this side, there's all what we would call the good emotions. In this side, we put what we should never call bad, but they are labeled bad emotions. So I rather talk about healthy, or 2 opposite types of emotions. Like this side, happy, sadness, joy, excitement. This side, depression, anxiety, sadness. None of these are bad. Okay, these are all information. And if envy, jealousy, even those, they aren't bad if they like this, you balanced. But if they aren't managed, then the so-called bad ones or unhealthy ones, or the ones in this side, they can start tipping. And when they tip, they become toxic and destructive. So when we keep them up here, they become constructive. So by paying attention to our emotional warning signal, we are then keeping them balanced here. If we don't pay attention, we don't manage our minds, they tip. And that's when the issues of our life start happening. This is what produces the sensations of people battling with mental health, and the experiences of people battling with mental health. Because when depression does this, it's overwhelming. When anxiety does this, it's overwhelming. When jealousy and envy do this, it's overwhelming. So what we want to do is, as we experience these, they tip, but we want to catch them and tip them back up again. And we do that by paying attention to them, becoming aware of them, and asking questions around them through a whole very organized process. Then at the same time, these good ones, if we get awareness of the sensation of peace because of a great thought. We want to make sure that we don't ignore that, but that we actually grow that and build that. So that one tips upwards. We want it to, tip upwards, so that tip upward, but not too much. We want it to tip upwards a little bit, and then we want it to rebalance again. So everything we want about balance. So this, the paying attention to our 4 signals is paying attention to how we show up. In any one moment, we as humans show up with our emotions, our behaviors, what we're saying and what we're doing, how our body feels, because everything's stored in our physical brain and body, as I've mentioned, and our perspective, how we're looking at life. And what we need to do is stand back and observe ourselves. I call that the multiple perspective advantage. We can train ourselves to do this all day long. Like right now in this conversation, you and I can stand back and observe ourselves. How are we using our words? How are we using our hands? How are we using our facial expressions? How are we interacting? The impact it's having on each other, the connection that's forming. You can do this at any point. I mean, there's excitement. We both in we kind of leaning in with our body. We both our behaviors. We're both excited. We're sharing words. Our perspective is this is important information. So we can analyze. We can be very aware of our signals. Now, those signals are coming from something. They're coming from a thought. And a thought, and you notice I'm doing this with my hands, a thought looks like a tree. And that thought that looks like a tree in the brain. It looks like a rolled up beaded carpet in the cells of the body. And it looks like a field, like an energy field. Like if you're looking at a podcast and you see it jumping up and down, that's kind of what an experience, a thought looks like in the mind. So this conversation is becoming a thought. We're hearing it, we're seeing it, it's sound waves, etc. It's going in via our mind as a field, which then sends an instruction to the brain, becomes a tree, which sends an instruction to the body, and then little carpets are growing inside of our cells, little beaded carpets. So that's what's happening all day long. That is neuroplasticity, okay? So, and then that combination of what's coming in then drives how we show up. So every time we show up in a certain way, it's not coming from fresh air, it's coming from a thought. Every moment that we are showing up, which is every moment we're awake, that is coming from a thought. So if we pay attention to the signals, it'll take us to the thought. And what the science shows is that how the thought got in, if you can track that process, you can then reverse engineer and you can change things that are disruptive to your functioning. So what I've done is over the past 38 years, and I continue to do the research, is work out what are the steps of getting stuff from a conversation like this into the fields, the trees, and the carpets, and then showing up as signals. And then how do we find the signals, track it back to the thought, reverse engineer, fix up the thought, and reconceptualize it, and then show up differently, if that's what we want to do. More enhanced, if it's the good stuff. If it's toxic, we want to reconceptualize that. Okay, so the signals are, being aware of those signals is the first step. And there's 5 basic steps involved in this process that you can use to do this whole reverse engineering process.
I love it. I love it. I'm super excited. And, I just heard you talk about that, right? The neurocycle, the 5-step scientific mind management system. What you asked at the event we were just at, you challenged everybody and said what thought trees are, right? And a visual way to explain, right? Like you just said, how experiences impact our brains and our bodies. And Dr. Caroline Leaf, I'm going to jump in, but I want to tell you why I'm so passionate about your work and what you do is, really quick, people that are listening probably know my story, but back in 1999, I came from New Jersey out to Tulsa, Oklahoma with big goals and dreams to play basketball at a Division I university called Oral Roberts University, ORU. And freshman year, make a long story short, got a young girl on campus pregnant. I'm 19 years old. They said, hurry up and get married. We got married. We're divorced in 8 months. Her family's philosophy is, well, if you get divorced, the dad has no rights. So they take my daughter. I throw away my basketball opportunity. I end up in this custody battle at 19 years old. All of my identity was in basketball. I was raised by a single mom. I had to make it. I had to rescue my mom, my sister from this poverty-stricken life. And so at that time, I created this story that I'm done. Like I was suicidal, depressed, down and out. And a friend of mine said, you need to enroll in a Bible school. So I enrolled in a Bible school and I didn't want to be there, but I started to hear all these things that were being taught. And I remember this one verse, Romans 12:2, do not be conformed to the things of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And I started to get intrigued with that, but there was no practical way how to do it. And so as I sat there, I said, wait a second. If this thing's true, how do you renew the mind? I went to Oral Roberts University. I started studying psychology. I enrolled and got a hold of Tony Robbins. And I read in a book, the meaning of anything in life only has a meaning you choose to give it. And I started to understand how the direct correlation scientifically between the mind and the body. And I was able to take biblical principles with how the mind works in the body and recreated a whole new story for my life. And it's what led to my purpose. I got full custody of my daughter, went on to write 6 books, speak on some of the largest stages. It's what we do. We go in, like, I'm so intrigued with this book is because we deal a lot with youth and our youth athletes, and we get to go into high schools and coach them on the physical side, but most importantly, the mental side of it. And so I was at the event you were at in regard to personal development side of it. I go in and I build people, and a huge part of building people is the mental conditioning and the training curriculum we put together, right? It's very basic, but it is backed off of, scientific data and some biblical principles. And so one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and I just wanted to tell you that's where I'm coming from, because I love what you do. You talk about, and this is super important to me, this is a big part of what I do, the active reach, how a statement of self-encouragement, right, followed by an action can strengthen, obviously, yes, your child's thought tree, and teach them how to fight through and persevere and become resilient. But also for an adult, this is important. Can you talk about the active reach? Can we talk about that for a moment?
Sure, absolutely. So you just very quickly, you said something there in terms of adults and children. The best way to help a child with their mental health and mental health is not something that's just applicable to now people that are battling. Mental health is, if you're a human and you're alive, you're battling with your mind. That is a reality. We have to work on our mind all the time. So the best way to help a child is for you to manage your own mental health.
Come
and
on.
That's really cool. Now, the active reach is the 5th step, though. If you, in terms of wiring stuff into the psychoneurobiological network, which is everything that then drives us. So all that experience you had, all those experiences were wired into your network. And for a while, those thought trees and those carpets and those gravitational fields, all those things I was mentioning in your initial 19-year experience and losing custody of your child and that kind of thing, that would have been a very toxic looking tree. It wouldn't have been a healthy tree. It was a very scary tree. It was one that was telling you all kinds of negative things about yourself and the experience, the root. If you think of the experience being the roots of the tree and the branches being how you were interpreting the information that was coming at you, that was going into the roots, like, this is bad, you bad, this is bad, what you've done is bad, bad, I'm bad, and lost your identity. And that's a lot of religious trauma, and it happens way too much in the religious community. There's tremendous religious trauma that is so unnecessary, because that's not love. Anyway, that's another whole discussion. But essentially, that network was driving then how you were seeing yourself, and then you were showing up your signals of suicidal ideation and depression, and not achieving what just your behaviors and everything. Your life was kind of falling apart. So you, in that state of that messy mind, you were encouraged to do something, and then the wise mind came in and stepped in. You activated, you started listening to your wisdom. Someone said some things that prompt you. This is why community is so important, and other people in our lives are so important. And that triggered you to start getting information. And now, alongside that toxic tree, you started building a healthy tree. And there was now a question being asked about, is that really the truth about me? And then you started saying, okay, well, let's blend these, let's heal this. Your story is your story. It never goes away. What you experience, that pain, sure, you still have grieving and sadness over that time, but because your story never goes away, but you've changed how it plays out into your future. So by getting new information, you basically healed the roots, and now that toxicity is reduced to, if you remember the picture I showed the other day of the tree where the toxic section just became a tiny little part, and the big tree was the healthy. So you change the network. So in other words, we can't change what's happened to us. It's with you forever, but you can change what it looks like inside the network. You can change the physical protein tree, the chemicals, the protein in your body, etc. And then that changes how you play out into the future. But to do that, you have to work in a way that aligns with the psychoneurobiological network, which takes time. So the active reach is step 5 of the process. Now, a lot of people start there. So a lot of people think, okay, well, if I say enough winning statements, and I know that you don't do this, I'm just saying that in general, people just take affirmations or some kind of statement, and they say, if I say this enough times, I'm going to believe it. You'll never believe it unless you've actually reconceptualized, because all you've done is that toxic tree that's driving how you function, the identity crisis and so on, that no matter how many nice words you put around it, it's a band-aid on the wound, because this is still festering. It's kind of like putting your hand on a stove and it's hurting you. So you take a painkiller and the pain takes the pain away, but you haven't removed your hand and it's burning through. So you've until you've dealt with the core issue, it doesn't matter how many positive affirmations and things that you put on or actions, it's not going to change. So in order for a positive affirmation, even for prayer, for positive affirmations, for healthy actions, for things that you do, techniques like CBT type techniques, for those to work, you have to have sorted out the rest of the tree first. And that's where people don't really do things.
Yeah.
They get stuck in the affirmation level. And then the other side where people get stuck is in the, and I know this is not directly answering your question, but I just wanted to emphasize
Please.
and put it in context. The other part is what people also do, which is not it's not an active reach, it's actually a brain preparation, are things like breathing and meditation and decompression. Those are all very, very important because we need to prepare our mind, brain, body physiology. So we need to be able to calm down our networks. When we're very worked up or very upset, when you recall, like I'm sure when you think back to the child where you lost in losing custody of your child, it's devastating. Your emotions were all over the place. Your behaviors, your signals were like firing up like crazy and affecting how you were functioning, and you were tipping like this, and that would have affected, you know, how you were functioning, staying down here and so on. So in other words, when we're in that state, in order to get ourselves back up again and to get a level of peace and calm so we can start doing the work, we need to do some brain preparation. And those are things like do some deep breathing, maybe do some movement. As you know yourself, movement is so critical in calming down our networks. That, you know, all those kinds of things. You can put prayer in there as well. But just saying a positive affirmation there is not going to be quite enough. But if you blend it in with the sort of meditative type activity, that can prepare the brain. So preparation prepares the networks and calms it down. Active reach, which is step 5. So you've got brain preparation, then you've got 5 steps. Active reach is step 5. And active reach is when you've done the brain preparation and the other 4 steps, the active reach solidifies the process. It starts growing the new way that you want to function, the new thoughts, because your functioning is based on the thoughts you build. The thoughts you build generate how you show up. So we have to build thoughts that are strong. And for a thought to be strong, that it shows up and doesn't just be there in a neutral form, you're going to have to practice using it properly. And so that's another thing. When we build a thought, I want to be like this, I want to win all day like this. You can build the thought, you can know what it is, but if it's only this big and you haven't actually done all the work and you've just used the statement that you started off with, it's an excellent statement, but if you're just not doing the other work in the brain preparation, the other 4 steps, that statement alone will keep you stuck. It's not going to be enough to progress you forward. You'll do little bits forward, you'll go a bit forward and then a bit back, and you may jump a bit forward and a bit back, but there's a lot of frustration in that process. So the reason being is that thought is still not fully developed, it's still small. And there's a lot of other thoughts. Think of every thought that you've built, is every experience you've had. At this stage of your life, you've got trillions of experiences. Think of that as a huge forest filled with trillions of experiences. So the big trees are the ones that are going to get through the non-conscious mind into the conscious mind and show up in your life. The little trees are just going to be there. They're not going to, they're there, but they're not going to be influencing how you show up. So no matter how many affirmations you put on top of that little tree, until you've grown it, it's not going to impact your life. And that's where the time frame and a planned and guided process is definitely important to make that active reach work really well. And that's where the other 4 steps of the neurocycle come in. So the active reach is vital to close the cycle, and every time you do an active reach, you're adding another bit more water to the tree and a bit more plant food. And over time, it then gets bigger and big enough to move through all the competing trees, have a sufficient energy to move into your conscious mind, show up with signals that you pay attention to and follow, and then develop it even more. And then a healthy feedback loop is set up. Does that make sense?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it. I love it. I could talk to you all day. I always relate it back to athletics and like lifting weights. Like you're building mental muscles. You train your mindset, just like you train your body. Yeah. And I think so many adults, and I honestly, I throw this number out there. I don't know the stats, but I would say the people I talk to, I'm talking adults, when I go and I asked the question yesterday, and how many of you have, the event we were at, right? You have people that are training in a profession, in a skill set. I want to be a great salesperson, right? I want to be great at whatever the profession is. And so I ask this question all the time, Doc, and most hands don't go up. Probably 90% of the room keeps their hand down. How many of you have an exact training program that's an everyday mental conditioning training program. Not that you do occasionally, an everyday training program. And 90% of the room keeps their hand.
You're
And
quite
so
right.
it's about reps, right? You got to get the repetitions in. And I think what you said is powerful, because we can't always control the thoughts that come to us, right? But the thoughts that come to us, your feelings come from your thoughts. And if you continue to make decisions based off of feelings, right? You think something, you feel it, you can actually train your thoughts and recondition your mindset. And I remember a book I read, I don't know if you ever heard it, but it says, it was called Act As If. And it's an old school book. It was Act As If. And I read the book, and in the book, I was going through my transition. It said, you know, if you want to be happy, don't wait until you're happy to smile. Start to smile now and create happiness. And I was like, wait, okay, so I'm just going to start to act as if I already have full custody of my daughter. I'm going to act as if I'm confident. I'm going to act as if I'm strong. I created this winning confession that we said earlier, opened up the show, and I didn't believe a word of it. I didn't believe one word of it. I would look in the mirror, Doc, and I would say, man, you're lying to yourself. What are you saying? But I started to act as if. But it didn't stop there. I didn't just say the winning confessions. I actually combined it with some actions. And I think you said this earlier. And this is where I love the church world. I speak a lot in the church world, and I stir it up a lot, because this is where the church world stops, right? We have these verses just like me, and I was in Bible school, and they were awesome verses, but no one knew how to do anything in the natural with them and take these verses and make them practical in their life. And so I think it's a powerful thing. Talk to us a little. I want you to take this wherever you want to take it right now. So you just talk to us.
No, thank you for saying that. So essentially what we need to, I say that to people a lot as well, that we all get, you're a basketball player, you work out all the time. We all get that you've got to work hard at getting to that point. I mean, when I first learned how to do yoga, I mean, I couldn't do anything. When and I've done all kinds of sports in my life, but every single one, I used to professionally show jump, and it didn't take 5 minutes to get there. But when it comes to the mind, the philosophy of the last 40 years is, if you feel bad, take a tablet, quick fix. Your mind is not a quick fix. Your mind work is a lifestyle. So the neurocycle that I've developed, neurocycle, that's these 5 steps, with the brain preparation, with the active reach being the 5th one. And I can briefly talk through those 5 steps. That is the formula, if you want, that you can put in whatever you want, whatever affirmation, whatever technique, as long as you put them in at the right place. That is the formula that will then change the networks. And if you do that formula over the correct time frame, you will then change what's going to happen in your life. And it's like, when you're a basketball player, there's a formula. You have to do X every day for X amount of time. I played basketball when I was at school. I was terrible at it, but I learned it. I mean, I learned it and I loved it, but there was rules. We had to learn, we had to practice, we had to, we had to be able to do what we had, you had to learn the skill. But when it comes to mind, people lose that. So the neurocycle is the how-to, it's the formula for how you can manage your mind and apply that in every context, whether that is your own personal mental health, whether it is to apply to your business, to develop something in your business, whether it's to learn a new skill, whether it's to manage the day-to-day struggles, whether it's to manage a huge trauma that's happened in your life. It's how you manage your mind. Your mind works all day long. And if we don't manage our mind, then whatever else we're doing is going to play second fiddle, because your mind drives everything. So therefore, what I'm doing is providing a formula for you to help your people to be able to, for example, the people that you reach, to be able to actually use the skills that it's fundamental. It's a fundamental skill. This is your mind. This is how your mind works. This is how you make your mind work. Now you add in whatever you need into that formula, and therefore you can apply it. And this is the skill you can teach a child as young as 2 and 3. That's why in this book, I've adapted it down so that parents can learn how to use the neurocycle with their children on as young as 2 and 3. It's filled with techniques and tips. And I also have in here a whole section on how to recognize if your child's in trauma, if your child's battling with sleeping, if your child's battling with social skills, identity skills, there's all kinds of stuff. And then the other book, then the app is the Neurocycle app, where it's for adults. We have a parent add-on in here. But essentially the 5 steps are, this brain preparation is the preparation part, the meditation, breathing, whatever. Then there's the gather awareness of those 4 signals I spoke about. Gathering awareness. It's very specific. It's very focused. Then it's reflect. You go into, why do I have these signals? Go deeper. expand, then it's capturing it in written form, not in a journal form. Don't journal it, although you date everything and it's on paper. You don't write lines. That will actually limit your ability of your mind, brain, body connection to go deep and to get insight. You want to write all over the page. I call that metacogging, and I explain it in the book, and there's videos in the app and everything. And then that really opens up the roots and gets you to the bottom of the tree. So when you start with the signals, you're pulling up the thought tree, and then you're weakening the branches. So now you can change them. So you can get insight. And the branches are how you're seeing yourself, how you've been functioning. And then the tree trunk is how you uniquely think, feel, and choose, how you got there. And then the roots are what happened. So you want to go all the way down, and you want to put plant food on, heal the roots, and reconstruct. So gather awareness starts the process. Reflect takes it to a deeper level. The right takes it even deeper. The recheck, which is step 4, is looking at everything you gathered, reflected, and wrote down, and seeing all these connections and patterns and antidotes and so on, and the active reaches and action. So out of those 4 steps, what can I do today? What statement am I going to make? What action? Because it's grown out of those, and now it's got meat. It's not just a band-aid, it's actually a reconstruction and a reconceptualization. And then you apply that. But this is a lifestyle, and it takes 63 days to change. Not 1, not 21. To build a habit takes at least 1 cycle of 63 days. If it's a simple habit, if it's something complex like a trauma, it's multiple cycles of 63 days. And that's why in the app, and it's in that book as well, I explain all this timing and everything in my other book. Where's my other book? I don't know where it is now. Is the other book is called Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess, which is for adults. So this one's 2 through 10-year-olds, adults to help children. Then the other one is called Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess. It's for adolescents and adults. The app is for everyone, all ages. And so basically where was I now? I was saying so many things at once. So essentially it's a lifestyle. This is something that if you do, when you're working, let's say that you're working on a big trauma, you would work for around about 15 to 45 minutes a day for as ever many neurocycles you need. For the first 21 days, it takes 15 to 45 minutes. And then for the next 42 days, which is the stabilization phase, it's about 5 minutes. If you're working on just a habit that you're changing, it may only take 1 63-day cycle, and then it's maybe about 5 to 15 minutes a day. So at any stage of your life, you never stop doing this. You can also do a neurocycle in under a minute. And you'll see in the app, I have many neurocycles, and in the book. So let's say you're in an argument or in a meeting or something, you still need to manage your mind. If someone's just worked you up and you can't, like I just had to do an interview earlier on, and I thought it was on Zoom, and it was a TV interview, and they use Skype. Can you believe anyone uses Skype still? Anyway, so I don't even have Skype. So I'm thinking, oh, where's the Zoom link? Oh, it's Skype. So in 2 minutes, I had like 2 minutes to get online for the TV interview, and I'm looking for the Zoom link, and I had to find Skype and get it. I mean, I could feel myself getting worked up. So I just did a neurocycle to calm myself down, keep myself focused, got it all done, quickly downloaded Skype again, whatever. And within 2 minutes, I was 2 minutes late to the thing, and I did the interview. And you know, this is a lifestyle. It's not something initially as you're learning, it's like anything, learning any new skill takes time. But once you take the time to do it, it's going to help. And if I may just say one more thing, to help kids, what we've done with parents is we've created a coloring book. I created a character called Brainy. You can see this little Brainy over here. We've even got a little toy. And this is great for 2 to 10-year-olds love this, dogs love this, adults love this too. But it's a brainy character that walks the mental health journey with your child, and they have a superpower called the neurocycle. And that kind of speak with a child makes a lot of, they appeal. This book is filled with cartoons and images of how to explain mental health to a child, how to explain thoughts to a child, how to explain when I feel bad about myself, or when someone's done something to me that they shouldn't, or touch me like they shouldn't. It's giving children the languaging to be able to express that. I also, in the book, in all my work, I give you sort of how to recognize the signals of trauma and the signals of just a bad habit and all that kind of thing. So it's a lot of information, but it's a lifestyle that will empower you and the people that you lead. Oh, and last thing, you mentioned renewing the mind. I've taught in churches. I teach everywhere. Churches, temples, you name it. I'm very spiritual. I teach in I support every kind of culture and belief system, because I think that's important. I know not everyone subscribes to that, but that's what I do. I teach in academic environments. I teach in neuroscience, as you mentioned. I train physicians. I work with all kinds of across the board. And everyone needs mind management. This is a basic fundamental life skill. And in terms of the sort of church language, renewing of the mind, as you so rightly said, Coach, is that the people think, oh, I renew my mind, and they quote the scripture, but how do you do it? The neurocycle is the how to. You want to know how to renew your mind? The steps of the neurocycle are literally what I teach inside churches of how to capture thought and renew your mind.
I love it. I love it. And I'm familiar with your neurocycle. And like, if you are in a church, there actually is biblical principles behind the steps in the neurocycle. And I love the whole, you know, Brainy, the cartoon. It's like a superhero, right? It's a superhero character to help kids understand the journey. Yeah, but you know what?
How cute he is.
Oh, come on.
Boy, there you
go.
Brainy. So that's available. They're available on my website, the coloring book and everything. We're having, it's just a great way, because if it's a young child, I mean, you can say to them, if they don't know how to, young child doesn't know how to express themselves, so a 2 or 3 or 4-year-old, I mean, you can pick up Brainy and so I see Brainy's very sad today, and Brainy's rubbing his tummy, and Brainy's rubbing his eyes, and Brainy's kicking the chair. And so in other words, what the child's doing, you can then go through the 4 signals and demonstrate it and say, I wonder why Brainy's sad. And that invites the child in and they connect and so on. But anyway, I explain exactly how to use all of that in the book.
I love it. And you know what I think the coolest thing is about your mission and your purpose right now with this book, because cleaning up your mental mess is awesome. Switch on your brain is awesome if you're an adult. But I think there's a lot of adults, just from what I get to do and I'm blessed to do. And I want you to speak to this just for a minute, Dr. Caroline, but I think so many adults ignore this component because, like you said, it takes 63 days. A lot of what you do is not sexy. It's not cool. You don't see the immediate result. So when I go into organizations and companies, it's like I can get them to do so many things really well. But the hardest part for many in the beginning is to understand the power behind training their mindset. And I always give them drills, right? Like you're talking about, you run these drills, and you develop eventually a skill, and eventually you develop a skill set, just like you do in your profession or as an athlete. So I give them drills to run over and over. So that way, like you said, right? The Skype, you're supposed to be on Zoom. You think or they're supposed to be on Skype. Who uses Skype? That can work you up. And so many people don't have the emotional resilience on how to process the thoughts, and they're reactive to what happens, and they see life happening to them rather than for them. But if you don't have coping mechanisms, if you don't have the strategies, the frameworks, what do? You react. And I just made a podcast this morning. I dropped a 5-minute winning word about what state are you living in, not geographically, but your emotional state. You get to choose it every day. And so I think the coolest thing that you're doing, I think this book and what I feel is like, it's going to force parents, if they really care about their kids, they're going to pick up this book. They're going to think they're just coaching and trying to help their kid, their child. But really, you know what it's going to do? It's going to help the adult, because there's so many adults that otherwise are not going to do what they need to do to heal, to overcome. But as they're helping their kids through the framework in the book, I believe it's going to speak to the adult just as much as it is the child.
You got to be doing it on yourself. Kids recognize authenticity. They will do what you do. They read body language. So you need to use it. You need to own your stuff. If you yell at your kids and you worked up, tell them, sorry, I did this and this is it. Do a neurocycle. Teach them that it's okay, but this is how we manage. It's okay to be a mess. This is how we manage our mess. That is critical. And it's a lifestyle. A lot of people are using this book as well for inner child work. We've had a lot of adults saying, they're using that to literally go in and do that inner child work from when they're, young adolescent, young childhood traumas and that sort of thing. So it's mind. Mind is fundamental. If your mind is a mess, your brain's a mess, your body's a mess, your life is a mess. And you can listen to all the great motivational talks and go to all the different services of whatever kind you like to go to until you actually learn an internal locus of control. And you constantly want an external locus of control, you will never find peace. And that's what I'm trying to help people find peace by recognizing how to develop your own internal locus of control.
Well, I absolutely love who you are. What you're doing is so important. I get emotional because I see adults that I deal with, and interact with on a daily basis. And I just know if they would just get a hold of some of what we're talking about today, if they just could understand that their life is a direct correlation and they're living out the story that they created from their thoughts, they could change everything. But so many people nowadays are so stuck, Doc. So we love who you are. I know we don't have a lot of time and I want to wrap this up. But today, guys, if you're just joining us, this is Dr. Caroline Leaf. And so we talked about warning signs, right, for the brain, how to teach yourself as an adult, but also your child to be aware. We talked about the neurocycle. We talked about the thought tree. Brainy, right? We introduced some of our tribe to Brainy, the cartoon superhero. And we talked a little about the active reach. There's so much more that we could talk about. But Dr. Caroline Leaf, I want you to do two things. First of all, I want you to tell everybody where they can start, right? I think that's the first thing. It's the start that stops most people. Do they buy the book? Because I know what I would recommend from reading your stuff, but would they buy the book and get the app? And where do they start? How could they get more of your amazing content and what you do in your practice? And then I want you just to close with any closing thoughts, maybe stuff we didn't talk about or something you feel led just to speak to the viewer or the listener on the other side. So where could they start? And then any closing thoughts?
Okay, perfect. Well, my website is drleaf.com. My social media handles are Dr. Caroline Leaf, and I put up this stuff all day long. Lots of good, helpful tips on where to start and just concepts of these concepts. I also have a podcast called Cleaning Up the Mental Mess, where I interview all kinds of people about all these things, and I teach a lot of basic solo stuff as well, with basic principles. The Brainy character and the coloring book, those are available on my website at drleaf.com. And in terms of where to start, if you've got a child, I would definitely go for this set for sure. And if you can get the Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess book for yourself too. Otherwise, start with the app, because in the app, it actually today we released the parent add-on. So this app is for adolescents and adults, and it walks you through how to do the neurocycle over 63 days. It's got the decompression activities. It's got mini neurocycles. It's got a parent add-on. We've got a webinar community starting in January. So all of it works together. So if you can get the app, the books, and whatever, get what you can, but start. If you've got to choose one thing, I would probably recommend start with the app, because the app is so interactive and so on. So there you go.
Yeah, I love it. Guys, you know, I coach a lot on the mindset, and it's a big part of what we do in Win All Day and the winning mindset curriculum. And guys, just trust me on this. Like, just get in Dr. Caroline's ecosystem. I've learned so much from her. I continue to study what she does, watch her, and there's nobody better, honestly, in my opinion. We have a good friend, Dr. Ed Milet, had you on his podcast. He had a great response from it. Craig Siegel, everybody that gets to have you in their world radically loves who you are and is able to change their life and transform. So Dr. Caroline Leaf, we're honored. I know we don't have a lot of time. I want to wrap this up. Is there any closing thoughts, anything you'd like to say that we didn't touch on, or any closing thoughts that you feel led for the audience?
Well, thank you for your kindness and all the great work you did, Coach, and your enthusiasm, and I really appreciate it. I would say two things. You can't change your story. You can't change what's happened to you, but you can change what it looks like inside of you and how it plays out into your future. And last statement, the hard stuff is the good stuff. That's one of my favorite things. The hard stuff is the good stuff.
I love it. Hey, this is Coach JC. This is Dr. Caroline Leaf. You're listening to the Win All Day podcast show. We are so honored. We just hope that you reap so many blessings in your life for what you sowed into our audience today. And we always like to end every show like this with our guests. If you could just say for us, I am Dr. Caroline Leaf. I am a winner. I will win and win all day. I am Dr. Caroline Leaf. I am a winner. I will win and win all day.
Absolutely. I'm Dr. Caroline Leaf. I'm a winner, and I'll win all day.
Come on, guys. Thanks again for joining us today. Coach JC, Dr. Caroline Leaf. I just want to remind you, you are a winner. You were born to win. So go win and win all day. Who loves you? We do. And we'll get at you next time, guys. Thanks for listening. Man, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if today's episode meant something to you, if it blessed you in any way, I want to encourage you to take a screenshot and share it on social media and tag me, Coach JC, so that I can give you a shout out, baby. And if you are ready to go to the new level, the next level, and win more in life and build a life of passion, fueled by purpose, then the Win All Day Personal Development Coaching might be a perfect fit for you. Just visit CoachJC.com to get started. Or maybe you want to do what you love and make money doing it. The greatest business to start right now is your personal brand business. Taking your knowledge, your wisdom, expertise, and your life experiences and sharing that with the world and getting paid to do it. If you want to build your purpose-driven, highly profitable personal brand, visit winalldaypersonalbrand.com. Fill out the application and one of my team members will be in touch. Or maybe you're here and need a breakthrough in your physical body.
Maybe you're needing or wanting to take control of your health, lose weight, get fit, and build strength. You can do it with our online workouts, nutrition coaching, and accountability over at winalldaystrength.com. Who loves ya? I do. And until next time, I want to remind you, you were born a winner. So go in and win all day.